I grew up with an older sister who, at least to everyone on the outside, seemed like the picture of perfection. She was the charming one, the girl who knew how to walk into a room and grab all the attention without trying. Relatives adored her, neighbors always complimented her, and teachers seemed to have endless patience for her jokes and antics. Me? I was the quiet one, the one described as responsible or serious, which is just a nicer way of saying boring. From the moment I could talk, it felt like my whole identity was measured against hers, as if I existed only to be the shadow she shined against. People always compared us. If she scored an 80 on a test and I scored a 95, the narrative wasn't that I worked hard, it was that I was trying to outdo her. If she bought a new dress, suddenly I was the copycat for wearing something similar. It was exhausting, and no matter what I did, I could never escape her looming presence. She had this uncanny ability to twist things so that I looked like the one at fault while she smirked sweetly in the background. On the surface, we looked like typical sisters, arguing one minute, laughing the next. But under that fragile surface grew something darker: jealousy, competition, manipulation. What started out as harmless teasing began to morph into small sabotage, whispered insults when no one was listening, taking credit for things I did, and planting seeds of doubt about me in our parents' minds. Back then, I brushed it off. I told myself it was normal sibling rivalry, that maybe I was just being too sensitive. I had no idea how far she was willing to go, how her need to stay on top would push her into betrayal so sharp it nearly broke me completely. I never imagined my own sister would be the one who betrayed me in the worst way possible. When we were little, the differences between us were obvious to everyone. My sister, or was what people like to call unnatural. She had this spark, this ability to fit anywhere, to make people laugh, to draw attention to herself without even trying. Family gatherings always seemed to orbit around her. She'd crack a joke, sing a line from a song, or do something silly, and suddenly the whole room was clapping and laughing. Adults adored her charm, cousins worshipped her confidence, and I blended into the background. I wasn't boring, not really, but I was quieter. I liked books better than games, structure better than chaos. While she thrived on an audience, I found comfort in sitting under a tree with a notebook. But in a family obsessed with praise and appearances, silence didn't win much appreciation. Relatives would pat her on the head and say, "She's going to be a star one day," while turning to me with a polite, "And you're so reliable." Reliable, the safe choice, the dull shadow that made her shine brighter. Those little moments added up more than I realized at the time. When I did something good, like get a high grade or win a spelling bee, the response wasn't the same. Instead of celebrating my achievement was compared against hers. "Don't rub it in your sister's face," my mom would say if I came home proud. Or my dad, "Grades aren't everything. You should learn to be more like her. Look how easily she makes friends." What they saw as advice carved into me like sharp edges. My sister basked in it, and over time, the seed of resentment grew into something poisonous. She began mocking me in front of others in ways that looked playful on the surface, but always landed like cuts on the inside. "Don't worry about her. She's the boring one," she'd say when friends came over, laughing as though it was all in good fun. And when the adults weren't watching, she'd lean in and whisper things like, "You'll never catch up. You'll always be in me." It didn't stop at home either. At school, she spread rumors, like the time she told classmates I cheated on a quiz even though I hadn't, or when she insisted I faked being sick to skip gym. People believed her, because why wouldn't they? She was the golden child, the charming one. I was the quiet shadow who never fought back loud enough. And yet, despite the cruelty, I still wanted her approval. I craved it desperately. When she gave me the smallest scrap of kindness, like lending me her sweater or including me in her jokes, I lit up inside. I thought maybe if I proved myself enough, maybe if I made her proud, she'd finally see me not as competition, not as her shadow, but as her equal. I didn't know then that she had no intention of ever letting me climb out from beneath her. As we got older, the little digs and comparisons stopped feeling like harmless sibling rivalry and started turning into something more deliberate. It was like my sister figured out that subtle sabotage hurt more than obvious fights. She never needed to throw a punch or scream to get to me. She found quieter, sharper ways to cut me down. It began with my belongings. A favorite shirt would suddenly have a bleach stain. Homework I left on the counter the night before was mysteriously gone in the morning. Once, I spent hours on a school project, carefully crafting a poster with glitter and marker, only to find soda spilled across it the next day. She shrugged when I confronted her, her eyes full of fake innocence. "Oh, maybe you just weren't careful," she'd say, smiling with that smug confidence that told me, "Yes, it was me, and you can't prove it." She became an expert at twisting situations too. Whenever our parents caught us fighting, she always slipped into the role of the victim before I even had a chance to explain. If I raised my voice, she'd put on tears and say, "See, she's always ulling at me. I don't know what I did wrong." And my parents, blinded by her charm and the carefully rehearsed act, would turn to me with disappointment. "Why can't you be more patient with your sister?" they'd scold, while she stood behind them, smirking. The worst part was how convincing she could be. At family dinners, little things I'd never even done were suddenly pinned on me. "She broke the vase," she'd whisper, and before I knew it, I was being told to apologize for something that wasn't my fault. My dad once grounded me for an entire weekend because she claimed I had lied about finishing my chores, when in reality, she'd undone them while I was doing homework. I sat in my room fuming, realizing she wasn't just messing with me. She was orchestrating things so I'd always look guilty, unreliable, or selfish. For a long time, I told myself this was normal. Siblings tease each other, right? That's what I kept repeating, even when my stomach nodded every time something went missing, or when her smirk haunted me after yet another unfair punishment. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, tried to convince myself she didn't mean to hurt me the way she did, but the truth became harder to ignore. This wasn't clumsy rivalry anymore. It was intentional. Piece by piece, she was dismantling my confidence, planting seeds of doubt in everyone's minds about me. She wanted to see me fail, and every time she succeeded, every time she swayed our parents or turned classmates against me, I felt myself slipping further into a role she had carefully written for me. The unreliable sister, the guilty one, the shadow that could never step into the light. It happened during my sophomore year, the year when I thought things might finally be getting better. I'd been working hard to keep my grades up, and for once, I actually felt like people were starting to notice me beyond being just her younger sister. I had aced a major math exam, one that most of the class had struggled with, and my teacher praised me in front of everyone. For a brief moment, I felt proud of myself. He kind of pride that wasn't tied to her or overshadowed by her presence. But good things never lasted when it came to my sister. What came next was a betrayal so sharp I can still feel its sting years later. A few days after I got that exam score, I walked into school and immediately sensed something was off. Whispers buzzed around me as I passed groups of students. People glanced at me and then leaned into their friends, their mouths curling into smirks. I tried to ignore it, convinced it had nothing to do with me. But by lunch, the truth hit me like a brick to the chest. A friend, or at least someone I thought was a friend, leaned over and muttered, "So, is it true? Did your sister catch you cheating on the exam?" I choked. "What are you talking about?" She looked at me almost apologetically. "She told a bunch of people she saw you sneaking notes during the test. Everyone's saying the only reason you did so well is because you cheated." My entire body froze. I couldn't even speak. The room suddenly felt too hot and all the eyes on me burned like fire. That was the moment I realized just how far my sister would go. She hadn't just messed with my stuff or tricked our parents. This time, she had gone after my reputation, the one thing I had built for myself outside of her shadow. By the end of that day, the lie had taken on a life of its own. Kids snickered when I walked past. Someone shoved a piece of paper into my locker with the word cheater scrawled in big, ugly letters. Even teachers started treating me differently. One of them, who had always admired my work, now gave me this look full of hesitation, as if wondering whether to believe what he'd heard advice. My math teacher, the one who had praised me so warmly, suddenly asked me to stay after class to go over the exam together. The way he studied me as I explained my answers made me want to disappear her into the floor. At home, I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd get some kind of support. But of course, my sister spun her story perfectly. She told my parents she had only shared what she saw, like she was some kind of innocent bystander caught between loyalty to her family and honesty to the truth. My mom pursed her lips and asked, "Did you really cheat?" My dad sighed and said, "If you did, you should confess now. Cheating will ruin you." I swore on everything that I hadn't, but the doubt was there, lodged in their faces, thick and heavy. It didn't matter how passionately I tried to defend myself. My sister had planted the seed and everyone else had watered it. That night, lying in bed, I realized this wasn't an ordinary fight I could brush off. She had gone beyond rivalry or petty jealousy. She had deliberately destroyed me where it hurt most. My integrity, my identity, the very thing I clung to when the comparisons became unbearable. She knew how important school was to me, how desperately I needed people to see me as capable, and she ripped it away with a single lie. The next morning, I walked down the hall with my head low, hearing the whispers follow me like a trail of poison. My cheeks burned with shame I didn't earn, and for the first time, I felt something shift permanently inside me. I no longer just feared her cruelty. I understood it. My sister wasn't going to stop until she ruined me completely. When I walked through the front door after that awful day at school, every part of me was begging for comfort. I wanted my mom to hug me, my dad to tell me it would be okay, anyone to look me in the eye and say they believed me. After the humiliation I'd endured, I needed home to be a refuge. But the second I stepped into the kitchen, I saw my sister leaning against the counter, her arms crossed, expression carefully crafted into worried innocence. And I just knew. Home wasn't going to save me either. My mom wasted no time. "Your sister says she saw you cheating on your exam," she said, her tone sharp but laced with disappointment, the kind that cuts deepest. My dad sat at the table, shaking his head like I had already confessed. I froze, my backpack sliding off my shoulder. That's not true. She's lying. I didn't cheat. I studied for weeks. You've seen me working every night. But my sister jumped in before they could respond. She had mastered the art of acting, her voice soft, her eyes wide. I didn't want to say anything, she murmured, but I couldn't stay quiet when it's wrong. I'm just worried about her. She's been under so much pressure lately. Maybe that's why she trailed off, pretending it was too painful for her to accuse me outright. The brilliance of her manipulation was that she didn't accuse me like a villain. She framed herself as the caring, selfless sister, looking out for me, making me look defensive and unstable. My mom sighed, turning to me with pity instead of trust. Sweetheart, if you're struggling, you can always talk to us. You don't have to take shortcuts. My chest burned, tears of frustration prickling my eyes. I didn't cheat. My voice shook louder than I meant it to, which only made her flinch dramatically, like I had just proven I was unhinged. My dad pushed back his chair, his face hard. Don't yell at your sister. She's been trying to help. Why would she make this up? Why would she? That was the cruelest part. Why indeed? To them, her lies were unthinkable, while mine were always possible. She knew exactly how to play that card, always one step ahead while I stood there drowning in outrage no one wanted to hear. That night, the silence at the dinner table suffocated me. My parents avoided my gaze while she chatted lightly, acting as though nothing horrible had happened. And I sat there feeling like a stranger in my own family, realizing that under the same roof I wasn't safe. I was outnumbered. The heartbreak settled deep inside me. Beck, Oz, you can survive cruelty from classmates, but when your own family chooses your sister's lies over your truth, the betrayal leaves a scar that never fades. It's hard to describe what it feels like when your whole world collapses around you, but that's exactly what it felt like in those weeks that followed. At school, I was branded the cheater. I'd walk into class and feel the walls close in from all the stares. Some kids smirked, others whispered just loud enough for me to catch the words. Fake, liar, pathetic. Even teachers seemed more curt with me, as if the lie had planted doubt deep enough for it to taint everything. What stung most wasn't the snickering. It was how quickly the people I thought were my friends pulled away. They stopped saving me seats at lunch. They stopped returning my texts. One even said, "Look, I just don't want the drama," like my pain was contagious. Going home wasn't any better. There was no sanctuary waiting for me there. My parents tiptoed around me, acting as though I was some disappointment they didn't know how to handle. Every time I tried to bring up the truth, the exhaustion in their faces shut me down. They believed her, or at the very least, they believed she couldn't do something like this. I was left floating alone in the wreckage, drowning in silence that screamed louder than words. The isolation stripped me of the little self-worth I had managed to cling to. For years, I'd been labeled the quiet one, the responsible one, the shadow. I had tried to prove I was more, but now, I wasn't even that. I was worthless. I was the liar who couldn't be trusted. I started asking myself questions at night, ones that tore right through me. What if they're right? What if I am nothing more than the villain she paints me to be? Nights were unbearable. I'd lie awake long after midnight, my chest aching from the weight press, sing down on it. Sometimes I'd cry so hard I had to bury my face in my pillow to keep from waking anyone. Other times, the tears didn't come at all. I'd just lie there staring at the ceiling, numb, hollow, feeling like life was moving on without me. Panic attacks became routine. My hands would shake, my breathing shallow, and the fear that I'd never escape this label would swallow me whole. School became a slow torture where every step felt heavier. Walking down the hallway, I could hear phantom laughter even when no one was standing nearby. I began shrinking into myself, keeping my head down, speaking as little as possible. My body language screamed defeat because inside, defeat was all I felt. I remember one afternoon vividly. I went into the library, sat at a corner desk, and just broke into tears, unable to stop myself. The librarian glanced over but didn't ask if I was all right. People just walked past me, indifferent to the fact that I was crumbling in plain sight. In those moments, it wasn't anger that consumed me, it was hopelessness. A bone-deep exhaustion that told me maybe fighting wasn't worth it. Maybe I really should just let her win because I had no fight left. That was rock bottom. Not just the loneliness, not just the betrayal, but the way her lies slithered so deep into me that I almost believed them myself. I wasn't just living in her shadow anymore. I was suffocating in it, and I couldn't see a way out. When you're buried that deep in hopelessness, it's almost shocking when someone finally notices. For me, it happened on a day I'd nearly given up trying to hide how wrecked I was. I sat in class, staring blankly at my textbook, the words on the page blurring together. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, and I must have looked worse than usual because after class ended, my literature teacher, Mrs. Chen, asked me to stay behind. At first, I panicked, my mind racing with thoughts that maybe I was in trouble again. Maybe another rumor had reached her. But when I turned toward her, she wasn't glaring. She was studying me with this quiet, steady Aunt Cern. "You've been different lately," she said softly. "Withdrawn, tired, like you're carrying something too heavy. Do you want to tell me what's going on?" It was those words, too heavy, that cracked something in me. I hadn't realized how desperate I was for someone to acknowledge it. The whole story spilled out. The rumor, my sister's betrayal, the way my family believed her, the loneliness that came afterward. I braced myself for disbelief or some lecture about toughening up, but instead, Mrs. Chen just shook her head and said firmly, "You don't deserve this, and I believe you." I broke then, tears spilling in front of her, but they weren't just the hopeless kind. They were laced with relief. For the first time in months, someone saw me. Not the version my sister painted, but me. She didn't just sympathize. She leaned forward and told me, "If you want the truth to come out, you'll need proof. Paper trails, messages, anything. Don't let her words be the only version of the story people hear." Her tone wasn't just supportive, it was empowering. Walking home that day, a strange, unfamiliar spark lit inside me. It wasn't much, but it was enough. For the first time since my world collapsed, I felt a flicker of resistance, a whisper that maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to stay broken forever. The very next day, I started thinking differently. For months, I had been stuck in survival mode, walking around with my head down, hoping the storm would blow over. But now, thanks to Mrs. Chen, I realized the storm wasn't going anywhere unless I fought back. So I started small. That evening, when my sister wasn't paying attention, I went through old emails and found the original exam results that showed my grade was earned legitimately, signed off by the teacher himself. I printed it out in secret and tucked it under my mattress like contraband. That single piece of paper ignited something in me. I began combing through everything. I kept notes of times she slipped up, like when she bragged to a friend on the phone about how easy it was to make everyone believe me. Not realizing I was in the hallway listening, I jotted down the date, time, and exact words. I screenshotted texts where she admitted small manipulations, the kinds of messages that seemed innocent in isolation but painted a much darker pattern when laid out together. It was nerve-wracking work. Every time I gathered something, paranoia ate at me. What if she found out? What if my parents noticed the folder hidden in my backpack? I kept it under my bed at night and carried it during the day, my heart pounding whenever she came too close. But that fear was different now. It didn't paralyze me, it pushed me. The hardest part was gathering witnesses. I quietly approached kids who had once seen both of us arguing or had heard her twisting stories. A few shrugged me off, but to my surprise, some admitted they remembered things that didn't quite add up. Hannah, a classmate quietly neutral during the whole ordeal, told me, "I always thought it was weird how fast people turned on you. If you need me, I'll back you up." Having even one ally felt like gold. Each page, each screenshot, each testimony added weight to my case. Weight that began to lift the heaviness inside me. For the first time in so long, I wasn't crumbling under her lies. I was building something stronger than them, the truth. Piece by piece, I transformed from the girl who flinched under whispers to the girl documenting, preparing, waiting. It wasn't easy hiding it from my family. My parents still believed her performance of innocence, and I couldn't risk tipping her off. There were nights I would hear her laughing to herself in the next room, and instead of crying into my pillow, I'd grip the folder and whisper to myself, "Soon." And that word carried me. Soon, she wouldn't be the only one holding the narrative. Soon, I'd drag everything she'd done into the light. And when that day finally came, I'd be seen, ready, not as her shadow anymore, but as a fighter armed with the truth she feared most. The day everything exploded started out deceptively ordinary. It was a Saturday afternoon, and my parents had invited relatives over for a family dinner. Normally, that would mean my sister would soak in the spotlight, laughing at center stage while I sat quietly in the background. But this time, I wasn't empty-handed. I had my folder with me, tucked carefully into my bag, thicker now with weeks of evidence. I'd planned to wait for the right opportunity, and when my sister went off on yet another well-rehearsed performance, painting me as untrustworthy in front of everyone, I knew the moment had arrived. She started slyly, turning to my aunt with a sigh. "I just worry about her sometimes," she said sweetly, tilting her head toward me. "She's been unstable lately, you know? That whole cheating scandal at school, the drama she caused. I mean, I tried to protect her, but it's exhausting." My stomach twisted, but instead of shrinking back, those words lit a fire in me. I felt my pulse pounding in my ears as I stood, my voice trembling, but loud enough to cut through the chatter. "You're done lying," I said. Every eye at the table whipped to me. Even my parents froze, forks in midair. She smirked like she always did, smug and careless. "What are you talking about?" This time I didn't back off. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder, dropping it onto the table with a satisfying slap. Pages spilled out across the wood. "I'm talking about this. The proof. The texts where you admitted making things up about me. The emails with my actual exam results. The notes where you bragged that it was easy to make everyone believe you." My hands shook, but I forced myself to meet every gaze around the table. "You've spent months ruining me, and I'm done staying silent," gasped Seat. Raquel the room as I started laying everything out piece by piece. The screenshots, the exam letter, the drafts and time-stamped files of the essay I'd supposedly copied. My cousin picked up one of the pages, her eyes wide. She really said this?" she asked. looking at my sister. For the first time in forever, my sister didn't have a comeback. Her smug expression faltered, her cheeks flushing red as her eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal searching for escape. "This is taken out of context," she stammered. "She's twisting things again." But my dad cut her off, his voice booming in a way that silenced everyone. "Enough. We've believed you long enough, and now we see the truth." His face was pale with shock, but his jaw was tight with anger. He turned to me, guilt written all over him. "And we doubted you." My mom pressed a hand to her mouth, tears welling. The relatives who had always adored my sister whispered among themselves, casting glances at her like they were seeing her for the first time with clear eyes. The cracks in my sister's mask were unmistakable now. Gone was the calm confidence. Her voice broke as she sputtered, I didn't mean for it to," but the words collapsed. She knew she'd lost her grip. I stood tall for once, not shaking, not whispering, but steady. "You wanted to ruin me," I said, my voice clear, even. "But all you ever proved is who you really are." The silence that followed was electric, heavy with the shock of power shifting right in front of everyone. For the first time, my sister wasn't the golden child. She was exposed. And for the first time, I wasn't her shadow. I was the truth, and the truth had finally won. In the weeks after that night, the shift was undeniable. My sister, who had always thrived on attention and admiration, suddenly found herself drowning in silence and suspicion. The family who used to gush over her every joke or story now kept their distance. Relatives called less. And when they did come around, they gave her cautious, judging looks instead of the blind adoration she was used to. Every word she spoke seemed to hang in the air too long, like people were weighing it, questioning whether it was another lie. At school, it was even harsher. The girl who once held the spotlight without effort couldn't even walk down the hall without hearing whispers. The same classmates who used to believe every word she said now avoided her, whispering behind their hands, "Can you believe she lied about her own sister?" Her circle of friends dwindled quickly, and even the ones who stayed acted stiff, hesitant, like they didn't know how much they could trust her anymore. Teachers, too, no longer looked at her the same way. She wasn't the charming golden child anymore. She was trouble, a manipulator who had fooled them all. I can't lie and say it didn't feel satisfying to watch her facing the same isolation she had once shoved me into. For months, I had lived under her lies, crumbling while she stood untouchable in her glory. Now, the roles were reversed. She was the one shrinking into herself, eyes darting nervously when someone laughed across the room, wondering if it was about her. But even as I saw her unravel, I didn't gloat. I couldn't. What she'd done to me was cruel beyond words, but a part of me felt the heavy irony more than triumph. She built this trap for me, worked tirelessly to bury me under a reputation as a liar, and in the end, it became her own downfall. Karma didn't need me to destroy her. She had dug her own grave. All I had to do was step back and let her fall into it. Looking back now, it almost feels surreal, like I lived through a story too twisted to be true. For so long, I thought my sister's betrayal had destroyed me forever. It had left me broken, silenced, and convinced that maybe I really was worthless. But standing on the other side of it now, I see the truth. She didn't ruin me. She changed us. She took the weaker version of me and forced me to find a strength I never knew I had. I won't lie and pretend it was easy. The scars are still there. I still remember the way my classmates laughed at me, the nights I cried quietly until my chest hurt, the gut-wrenching feeling of realizing my own parents didn't believe me. Those moments live in me, but they no longer torment me the way they once did. Instead, they remind me that I survived something that should have shattered me. And not only did I survive, I came out stronger. Her betrayal became my crucible. In the loneliness, I learned how to rely on myself. In the silence of doubt, I learned the weight of my own voice. And when I was finally given the chance to expose the truth, I discovered something extraordinary, that even when lies are loud and cruel and relentless, truth has a power that cannot be buried forever. I don't carry bitterness toward her anymore. Bitterness would mean she still has control over me, and she lost that long ago. What I carry instead is clarity. She showed me who she really was, and in turn, she showed me who I really am. Resilient, independent, and unafraid to stand on my own. Rebuilding my life wasn't instant, but it happened piece by piece. I regained friendships, I earned back respect from my teachers, and most importantly, I found validation that didn't rely on her approval or anyone else's. I finally stopped living in her shadow because I realized I didn't need to compete with her glow. I had my own light all along. She had just tried so hard to snuff it out. Now, when I introduce myself, I don't think of myself as the sister of anyone. I think of myself as me, someone who endured betrayal, someone who fought back, and someone who won. My sister tried to ruin my life, but all she really ruined was her own mask of perfection. And in the ashes of her cruelty, I found something she never expected me to have: the strength to become the strongest version of myself. In the end, she pushed me down so far that I discovered what it meant to rise, and I've never stopped rising since.